This person you have in your platoon, send them up here and we're going to show how to do this. And so platoon 30, 50 sent this. I think it was a guy. He's either a guy or an ogre. He was huge. And 30, 49, they sent this guy up. He couldn't speak at all, but he was huge. And I knew who was going to be sent up from our platoon. It was going to be Bass Knight. Bass Knight. He was incredible. He didn't talk a whole lot, but he looked like a Marine. And they said, 3051, who's your man? And Drill Instructor Staff Sergeant Haynes Swing Master of Pain, sir, said, Wright! I'm the only Wright. Well, there's a Kevin Wright, but he was skinny like me. And so I didn't move. He goes, Wright, get up there now! And he looks over at me, oh no. Now I weighed about 122 pounds. And I was 5'11". And so I go up there, and the coach goes, this is how you do pugil sticks. He says, there's several types. He says, there is a slash. And the slash is you take your pugil stick and you hit the other person like that. And he has these two guys that are almost human up there, and me. And he goes to that one guy, he goes, do a slash on him. So I go like that, he goes, no, you're trying to kill him! Do a slash! And there, bam, as hard as I could. And this guy goes, that's it. But it was as hard as I could. And then there was a jab. And the jab was you take the pugil stick, you go bam, right into wherever. Tried to hit him in the solar plexus, knock the wind out of him. And so he did it and goes, now do it to this guy. And so I did it to him. He goes, kill him, right? And so I did it as hard as I could. And I got him moved anyway. And then the third thing was the uppercut. And that's where you take your pugil stick and you go bam. But there wasn't a third guy there for me to do it on. That's when I figured out that they was going to be doing it on me at the same time. These guys, he didn't have to say, you're going to kill them. That's just how they lived, you know? And they both went and hit me in the chest with that. I went, I must have been that high in the air. I go back and I land on my back. Have you ever got your wind knocked out of you? You go, and the drill instructor's back there, or the coach, he's back there, goes, Wright, you get up right now! And he goes, Wright, what are you? And I'm laying there, Private's a mean, green, killing machine. And so I was okay. I think if I would have not done that, they would have got rid of me. But I did that, and I stayed there. And see, that's the world I was raised in. Young people today, they're not raised in that type of world. Now, if this does not apply to you, then I apologize. Well, I don't apologize. But if it doesn't apply to you, then that's okay. But this is what people my age think about young people today. That it's not uncommon to get sensitivity training. That means you gotta get in touch with your own feelings. We didn't have feelings to get in touch with. If we were supposed to feel a way, my dad would tell me how you're supposed to be sad. Oh, I'm sorry, Dad. You didn't think of, in the Marine Corps, you didn't think of anything on your own. So that is it, and then you're in sports and they give out participation trophies. What is that? I mean, yes, they were here. I saw your volleyball game out there. Now, I tell you what, it wasn't looking like you all were playing for participation trophies. It looked like you wanted to kill the other team. It gave me a little bit of hope, you know. Hitting that ball over, and especially those ladies, guys. I mean, they're fierce out there. And so it's a little bit different. I hear, especially in college now, You have everything that we had, but now you have safe places. What's a safe place? It's so that if someone makes fun of you, you can go there and they stop making fun of you. You guys are laughing. Have you used those places? Oh, okay. I don't know, maybe you don't know. Those are good. I don't know. I think that's where you go and say, no, don't yell at me. You're not allowed to yell at me. It hurt my feelings. I wish that's all they did was hurt our feelings. You know, that feelings was different back then. Plus, things were simpler. 2 + 2 = 4. It was like that every time. Now, if you put 2 + 2 and you put 5 down, they say, well, it could be. No! 2 + 2 = 4. What is 2 + 2? It's Jello. Okay, that's Jello. So when I grew up with a different outlook on things. And when I started going to church, my wife, she taught me the gospel, and I started reading the Bible for the first time. I loved reading the Bible. Reading the Bible. I need someone to help to read something. Could I get someone? I need 3 people. Could I get someone to read 1 Samuel 17, verses 4 through 11? 1 Samuel 17, 4 through 11. Would someone volunteer to read that? The awkward silence is broken. Yes! Thank you. Can I get someone else to read 1 Samuel 17, verses 32 through 37? Thank you very much. And one other person, read 1 Samuel 17, verses 40 through 51. You are wonderful. Amy. Yeah, okay, thank you. So in 1 Samuel 17, you have David. David's a young man, and he has older brothers there in the military, and they're at war with the Philistines, and David, he's taking care of his dad's sheep, and he goes up to visit his brothers. And when he goes up to visit them, something really strange happens. You have Israel's army on the side of the mountain here, and you have the other army here, and you have a valley between them. And they're going to go to war. But they did something different back then. See, the whole armies could go to war, and then they just kill a whole lot of people. Or they could send out their champion. And one champion would fight against another champion, and if they fought against each other, the winner, the other ones would be their slaves. So this is what's going on. David gets there, and he's just a young guy, and coming in to check on his brothers and everything to give a report back to his dad. And look at 1 Samuel 17, beginning at verse 4 through 11.
And a champion went out from the camp of the Philistines named Goliath from Gath, whose height was 6 cubits in a span.
That's about almost 10 feet tall. Big guy, like one of those people that I did bugle sticks against. Go ahead.
He had a bronze helmet on his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze.
That's about 125 pounds, I think. That's how much I weigh. And that's just his coat thing. Go ahead.
And he had bronze armor on his legs, and a bronze javelin between his shoulders. Now the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his iron spearhead weighed 600 shekels, and his shield bearer went before him. Then he stood and cried out to the armies of Israel and said to them, "Why have you come out to line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and you the servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves, and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us." And the Philistines said, "I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together." When Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistines, they were dismayed and greatly afraid.
Okay, so they send out their champion, a giant of a man. And he says, "Come out. Come out, send your champion out to fight." Now, when they looked at this guy, they were afraid. And if you say, wow, they should send me, well, you weren't there. I think if they said, you send me, I don't know that we'd be real quick. Over when I was in Beirut, we was on the flight line, and over there when we were being shot at, what you had to do is you had to call into the headquarters and get permission, which was out on the ship, get permission to be able to shoot back. If you didn't get permission, you were not allowed to shoot back. I worked on Cobra helicopters. And so when we was getting shot at, we call up, get permission to launch the Cobras. When the Cobras went out, man, they are deadly. As soon as they got up in the air, everyone stopped shooting at us because they would just blow them up. You know, one day we're getting shot at. We go out to have someone call for permission. The radio's not working. So they said I think it was the AMO, Major Allen, says to a captain there, he said, listen, Captain, you need to go over, and it was on the flight line, and there's a tower. You know the tower that they do flight control out of? There's a tower there that says, go over there, and they have railings on the outside. Climb up that, and then once you're in the flight tower, you can call to the ship, because they have a different radio system. And the captain, I'm standing there with my guys, and the captain goes, yes, sir. And he turns around to a lieutenant, he says, Lieutenant, you need to go to that tower. And you need to climb up that tower, and you need to radio the ship and get permission. And the lieutenant said, yes, sir. He said, Gunny's an enlisted guy. He said, I need you to go over, The Gunny said, that's not a problem. Sergeant, go over there and climb up that tower and call over. And the sergeant said, do it right now, sir. Lance Corporal. Lance Corporal is really nobody. You have privates, and over there you don't even have privates. If you're over there, you've been promoted once, so you have PFCs, and then you have Lance Corporal. Have any of you ever seen the movie The Expendables? Yeah, that's what Lance Corporals were, Expendables. And so he said to Lance Corporal, he said, you need to go over there, you need to climb up there, you need to tell them that you have to call over to the ship and tell them this. And he goes, I'm not going to do that. You don't do that. You don't say no, but he said no. And my captain that was in charge of the ordnance shop, Captain Kamich, he's looking at all this going by. I mean, it's all happening in an area smaller than this. And Gunny, Sergeant, Lance Corporal, Captain Kamich takes off. And he goes over, and he runs up there, and he climbs up that tower. And when he climbs up that tower, he gets in there, and he calls over, and we're allowed to launch the Cobras. Launch the Cobras, everything quit. It was just that fast. Do you know who didn't run over there and do that? Me. I didn't. I was looking like, this is crazy what's going on. But I didn't say, let me do it. These folks are coming out, they see Goliath there, and no way am I going out there. So this is going on, and David, this young man David, he's watching this. Could you read 32 through 37?
Don't worry about this Philistine, David told Saul. I'll go fight him. Don't be ridiculous, Saul replied. There's no way you can fight this Philistine and possibly win. You're only a boy, and he's been a man of war since his youth. But David persisted. I have been taking care of my father's sheep and goats, he said. When a lion or bear comes to steal a lamb from the flock, I go after it with a club and rescue the lamb from its mouth. If the animal turns on me, I catch it by the jaw and club it to death. I have done this to both lions and bears, and I'll do it to this pagan Philistine. For he has defiled the armies of the living God. The Lord who has rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine. And Saul finally consented. All right, go ahead, and may the Lord be with you.
David goes, I'll go. Send me. And Saul's the king. He's head of the army. He goes, you can't go. You're just a kid. And this guy, look at him. And he's been a warrior all of his life. here is a difference between David and the rest of them. David knew he could not defeat Saul. I mean, you can look, this isn't a fair match. But David knew someone who could defeat Saul. Who was that? God. God. He said, when a bear came after me and got the sheep, I went over and I chased it. And I don't know what translation that was, but I think it said he clubbed him to death. I like that. He went over and he did it and said, and then the lion, same thing. And David says, and God will be with me as we fight this, in the New King James says, this uncircumcised Philistine. God will be with me and he'll allow me to defeat him. David's faith was in God. But you see, when I look at David, I think, well, that's someone who grew up that I admire. So what happens? Verses 40 through 51.
Then he took his staff in his hand and chose 5 smooth stones from the brook and put them in the shepherd's house. His sling was in his hand and he approached the Philistine. And the Philistine moved forward and came near to David with his shield bearer in front of him. And when the Philistine looked and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, ruddy and handsome in appearance. And the Philistine said to David, am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. The Philistine said to David, come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and to the beasts of the field.
Okay, hang on just one second there. Before Saul sends him out, do you remember what Saul does? It wasn't read, but you remember? He gives him what? His armor. He said, you go out, if you're going to fight him, you go out like a warrior, put his armor on. And David's like, he was probably as skinny as I was, you know, and put all this armor. He couldn't even walk. So he says, I don't need that. And he goes out clothed in his faith. And he picks up some stones, has his staff, and he goes out to fight him. And the Philistine looks at David and kind of mocks him. And then David answers back. Go ahead.
He says,
Verse 45. Yeah.
And David said to the Philistine, you come between me with the sword and the spear and the javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. And I will give the dead bodies of the host of Philistines today to the birds of the air and to the wild beasts of the earth, and that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that all his assembly may know that the Lord saves not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand. But when the Philistine arose and came and drew near to David ran quickly towards the battle line to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand in his bag, took out a stone and slung it, and struck the Philistine on his forehead. The stone sank in his forehead, and he fell on his face to the ground. So David prevailed over the Philistine with the sling and the stone, and struck the Philistine and killed him. There was no sword in the hand of David. Then David ran and stood over the Philistine, and took his sword, and drew it out of his sheath, and killed him, and cut off his head with it. When the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled. And the men of Israel and Judah rose with a shout, and pursued the Philistines as far as Gath to the gates of Ekron, so that the wounded Philistines fell on the way from Shebarim as far as Gath and Ekron.
That's good right there. He says, David goes up, and it's amazing to me because here comes Goliath, and David runs toward him. And as he runs toward him, he reaches in, he gets his stone out and slings it, hits him in the head, and kills him. When I look at that, you know, this is what comes up inside of me when I'm reading that. Yeah, he's a man, a mighty warrior, and he goes after him, and nothing is going to stop him. That's a man that is. You just read about that, you go, wow. That's it. But he's not the only one. There's also a guy named Elijah. Does anybody know who Elijah was? Turn in your Bibles to 1 Kings 18. 1 Kings 18. Elijah was a prophet of God and just an amazing man. Now, if I could get someone to read 1 Kings chapter 18, verses 16 through 25. Could I get someone to read that? 1 Kings 18, 16 through 25. Thank you. And then someone else, it's going to be a big reading. Verses 26 through 40. 26 through 40. Can I get someone to read that? Thank you very much. Okay, so Elijah is this prophet, and he's a prophet of God. And the king, Ahab, he has started worshiping these false prophets or false gods, Baal and such. And Elijah has said it's wrong, so Ahab, he wants to kill Elijah. And Elijah hasn't been showing himself, and now he comes around to another man, Obadiah, and he tells Obadiah, you go get Ahab and tell Ahab that I'm here. And he said, no, because if I go tell Ahab that, then you'll disappear and Ahab will kill me. He goes, no, I'll be here. So that's what happens. And 1 Kings 18, 16 through 25.
So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. When Ahab saw Elijah, Ahab said to him, is it you troubler of Israel? And he answered, I have not troubled Israel, but you have in your father's house, because you have abandoned the commandments of the Lord and followed the Baals. Now therefore send and gather all of Israel to to meet me at Mount Carmel, and the 450 prophets of Baal, and the 400 prophets of Asherah, whose you had Jezebel's table. So Ahab sent to all the people of Israel and gathered the prophets together at Mount Carmel. And Elijah came near to all the people and said, how long will you go limping between two different opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him. And the people did not answer him a word. And Elijah said to the people, I, even I only, am left the prophet of the Lord, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. Let 2 bulls be given to us, and let them choose 1 bull for themselves, and cut it in pieces, and lay it on wood, but put no fire to it. And I will prepare the other bull, and lay it on the wood, and put no fire to it. And you call upon the name of your God, and I will call upon the name of the Lord. And the God who answers by fire, he is God. And all the people answered, it is well spoken. Then Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose for yourselves 1 bull and prepare it first, for you are many, and call upon the name of God, but put no fire to it.
Okay, now, I'm going to go ahead and summarize this next thing because we're getting close to being out of time. Here's what happens. So they say, okay, that's good. The people say, that's good. It amazes me that the people of God, they wasn't going to say a word about who was really God. These are the people of God. They knew God, and they're just faltering, as he says, between 2 opinions. Is God Almighty God, or is Baal God? And so Elijah says to do that, and so that's what they do. They get these bulls, and they cut them up, and because there's so many prophets of Baal, they go first. They cut them up, they put them on the thing, and they begin to call upon Baal to come down and consume the sacrifice. So they yell at him to come down. Does Baal answer? No, there's no Baal. But the people think there is, and they yell. And Elijah's like drill instructor, staff sergeant, hang slave, and master of pain, sir. Elijah says, you better call a little louder. Maybe your God can't hear you. And so they're calling out louder and louder. Hear us, O Baal, come, consume it. Nothing happened. Elijah goes, maybe your God went on vacation. Maybe he's gone. Yell a little louder. And these people were sincere. They took knives and started cutting themselves so that their God would see how sincere they were. They're cutting themselves. Come, Baal, answer, consume the fire. And nothing happens. And so Elijah, he keeps it up, just keeps it up, mocking them, saying, yell a little louder. Maybe he went on vacation. Maybe he's occupied. Just yell a little bit loud. Nothing happens. And then Elijah calls on God. And he says, come down and consume this, so that everyone will know that there is a God in Israel. And it's God Almighty. And so everyone is watching. Now all of Israel has been gathered together and they're watching it. And Elijah says, whoa, before I call, we need to do something first. Anybody remember what he did? What's that? Oh, he takes these jars of water and he says, pour it over the sacrifice. Now, if you're going to consume something with fire, that's not what you want to do. But they pour them all over the sacrifice, and there's a stones all around it where the altar is. And he says, do it again. So they fill up the jars again with water, and they pour the water all over the sacrifice. And he says, do it again. And everyone's watching, and they do it again, and the water comes down, and it fills up the trench around the altar there. And then Elijah prays to God. And do you remember what happens? Whoosh! It's consumed. But not only that, the stones and everything. The mighty works of God are amazing. And the prophets of Baal, they see this. And then all Israel, who would not utter a word, who would not say there is a God, that God is God, then they all looked. And then they joined Elijah and chased all the prophets of Baal out. And you see that. And for someone that was born at my time, you go, now that's a man. That's all the further we look. In 1 Corinthians, you have the great apostle Paul, and he is amazing. The guy is afraid of nothing. He preaches and preaches and preaches. And when he does this, he's taken out and he's five times they take whips and whip him. And when you did it, you could only whip somebody 40 times. And so they had this policy. They didn't want to accidentally go over, so they stopped at 39. He was whipped 5 times like that. He was beaten with rods. He was stoned. He was left for dead. He was shipwrecked. Man, that's a preacher. He was a man of God. And if he was born during my time, you look at him and that's all the further you look. But I want us to look at a little bit of other passages to go along with this. Because people of my age, we've messed things up a lot. And I think this is one of the reasons. I mean, we've done a lot of good, but there's a lot of things that we maybe have taught our kids is not really great. Because we didn't ever say we needed help. That shows weakness. In the Marine Corps, they say, weakness, that's just pain leaving the body. Pain is good. Extreme pain is extremely good. That's what we always said. But you know what? If you look at David, could someone turn over to Psalm 61? Psalm 61. Now this is the same David who defeated Goliath. This is the same David who, when the bear came and stole a sheep, that he went after the bear and killed the bear and killed the lion. Now, look over in 61. Could I get someone to read Psalm 61, verses 1 through 4? Thank you.
God, hear my cry. Pay attention to my prayer. I call to you from the ends of the earth when my heart is without strength. Lead me to a rock that is high above me, for you have been a refuge for me, a strong tower in the face of the enemy. I will dwell in your tent forever and take refuge under the shelter of your wings.
This is David. David who defeated Goliath and the bear and the lion. You see David, and he's crying out to God. Boys don't cry. That's what I was raised with. It shows weakness. Boys don't cry, and here is David. And what is he doing? He's crying out to God. You see, the truth of it is, it doesn't matter when you grew up. There's times when you need to cry out. You're just overwhelmed. You're overwhelmed. In our house anyway, you didn't say you were overwhelmed. You didn't say anything. You didn't cry out. You put everything inside and you left it there, and you handled things in not a very good way. We called it being tough. I think it was kind of dumb looking back on it. David, this great man of God, this wonderful warrior, cries out to God again and again in the Psalms. When you read about David, you see that. And Elijah, this great prophet of God, who goes in and challenges all the false prophets and the god of Baal. He's an amazing man. And you see him right after they chase the prophets away, they kill the prophets, and Jezebel, Ahab goes back to Jezebel and says, here is what Elijah has done, and Jezebel sends a message and says, I will kill you for what you've done. Do you know what Elijah did? He ran away to a cave and prayed that God would kill him, let him die. We pretend like we don't have those feelings, but whether you're a guy or whether you're a gal, there's sometimes you feel that way. Life is hard and it's overwhelming. And when we say, listen, if you're strong, you don't cry out. If you're strong, you don't ask for help. We're sending people the wrong message, because the great people of God, they cried out in times of trouble. God says He would never leave us nor forsake us. He wants us to cry out to Him. We aren't that strong. We know that we can't defeat the enemies by ourselves. When we're being attacked by Satan and all the evil out in the world today, we're not able to stand up against that alone and defeat it, but God is. So who do we cry out to? We cry out to God. Lord, help me. It's amazing though. David had not only times where he cried out, but God gave David a special friend. His name was Jonathan. Jonathan was a friend that sticks closer than a brother. He was a man who, when David needed to talk, Jonathan was there. When Jonathan needed to talk about his dad, Saul, David was there. You know, to get through this world, we need good, strong friends that have great faith in God. Friends that will help us through those times. Friends that we can go to and say, I need help. We have to have that. And Elijah, God went and reassured Elijah, I have 7,000 prophets who haven't bowed the knee to God, to Baal. I have these other prophets. You're not all alone. And he gives him another prophet to go with him, Elisha. And Elisha would go with him, and they were there together. You see, that's what we need. We need someone that we can. And Paul, this amazing preacher. I look upon said, I wish I was a preacher that Paul was. Nothing bothered him. He would call it as he saw it every time. He was there, and it's an amazing thing. But if you go to the book of Colossians in chapter 4, you find out God gave Paul people like Barnabas, people like Silas, and Timothy, and Luke. And what did they do? They traveled with him. And when things got hard, sometimes they helped sneak him out over a wall in a basket. They was there to do whatever they could to help him out. The thing is, all of God's people have needed help. I need help. And I think it's my generation that was raised a certain way. When we say we need help, the answer is, well, just pray about it. And should we pray about it? Yeah, we call out to God, don't we? But God has always, He knows us, He's created. He knows us that sometimes we need to see somebody and be able to go up to them and talk to them. I saw people come in and you go, hey, how you doing? We didn't do that. Do you know what we did? We see somebody, come here. I need your help. Yeah. You're big. Okay, I'm old. You can't hit me, okay? See, what they did when we saw someone come, hey, how you doing? We didn't do that. No, we were punch him in the shoulder. Then I told you, we traded punches. Bam! And then they go, and you get ready. Bam! You hit me now, and I'm going to fall down, so don't do that, okay? That's what we did. We didn't do this. Oh, man, good to see you, buddy. We didn't do that. What's wrong with you? You can sit down there. You say, what's wrong with you? You didn't do those things. You know, you didn't have really close friends. You can't. Every time you see them, you punch them. I mean, that's not conducive, you know, to friendship. But man, that's what we did. In today's world, we need someone to give us a hug. Outstanding. We need someone to give us a hug, don't we? I mean, hey, we're brothers in Christ, we're sisters in Christ. I went to OVC, and Pam, my wife, she grew up in the church. She's the one that taught me the gospel. Most beautiful woman in the world, and she fell for me. Isn't that something? That's God. So we go to OVC. I get out of the Marine Corps. I go to OVC, and there's folks like Melissa, right? Uh-huh. Yeah, there's folks like Melissa, and I'm there. I live off campus because I'm married and have kids. Mm-hmm. And all these college girls come up and they go, "Hey, Joe, come here." And so these college girls come up, and you know how they greet everybody? With hugs. So she come up to give me a hug, and I don't hug. So what do? You compromise. You give a side hug. Yeah, nice to see you. Yeah. And it really does a lot for you, doesn't it? No, but that's how I did. You can head sit down. That's what we did. We did the side hug because you don't hug. And then not only that, I felt guilty. And I would go home, and there would be Pam, and I'm feeling guilty. Some girl, I didn't even know her name, she came up and hugged me. And I go home and, hey, hon, that's what I do when I get nervous. There's this girl, and she came up and hugged me. I didn't even know her, I didn't hug her back. And you know what Pam did? She laughed. She thought it was hysterical. I don't know that a girl hugged me and she felt that was unbelievable, or that I'm like, oh no, honey, I don't even know her name or anything. She just came up and hugged, and I did the sideways hug, and she just laughing. Wasn't raised in the church. Raised where you didn't do that. It shows weakness. It shows strength. It shows that we have a love for one another. Now someone comes up to hug me. I've been a Christian a long time. I've been Christian. You come up to hug me, I give you a hug. We'll hug back and forth. You come up to hug me, I still kind of go like that. I can't help it. It's trained in me. And Pam, she still smiles and giggles at me. But I don't go to her and go, oh honey, this is girl. She just come up and hug me. I don't know her. I don't know her name. I've never saw her before. She means nothing to me. I don't do that anymore. I've grown past that. I've grown. I've got in touch with my feelings.
Safe
Here's
spaces.
the thing. We all need help. All of us. And when I was talking about people at your age, I was intentionally exaggerating about how you guys, oh, I need my safe place. I hope I was exaggerating. We all need help. God has created us to be able to have brothers and sisters in Christ that we can go to. And we can help. And He's commanded us. He's commanded us. In Galatians 6, 1 and 2, I think probably every class you have, they're going to mention that passage. That we're supposed to, if someone is overtaken in a trespass, you who are spiritual, you go to them and restore such a one. And you restore them in what? Gentleness, right? You don't go, what's wrong with you? You need to buck up, buddy. We don't do that. We restore them with gentleness and knowing that that could happen to us. But when it happens to us, we would never share it. We just kept it. A friend of mine, when we preached up in Clearfield, she was never careful what I say. But she was a little girl. She was 14 years old. Her mama let this guy move in to their trailer, who got kicked out of his house, and had the two of them sleeping in the same room, but told them not to do anything. And she got pregnant. She came to church and went forward. I tell you what, I cannot imagine the courage that young girl had. 14 years old, finds out she's pregnant, she goes to church, she goes forward, and her name was Annette, and I'm talking to Annette and telling her that I love her, and announced to the church that what had gone on, and that she's going to need our love. We're dismissed. Annette, she's still crying, and I have my arm around her, and I'm walking down, and someone goes up to me and says, hey, John, I need you for a second. I said, just a minute, Annette. And I went over to see what they wanted, and one of my dearest friends, she's the only girlfriend my wife has ever allowed me to have. Now, I was maybe 30, maybe not that old, and she was like 70-something. And she'd say, hey, and she called me boyfriend, and we would go walking the track out behind our house. But Betty could be tough. I look over, and there's Betty talking to Annette. And my first thing is, I have to go rescue Annette, because I can just hear, now listen, young lady, you're only 14 years old. I can just see what's going to happen there. I'm going over, and as I go over, I go, hey, John, I need to talk to you. I said, I can't talk right now. He goes, no, this is important. Okay, what is it? And then I head back over, and there they are. They're still talking. They're walking back, and I know Annette's trying to get away. And old Betty's not having it. She's right after her. All the way down, and I get down there, and Betty walks away, and there's Annette, and Annette's crying, and I said, oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. And she goes, that is the sweetest lady I've ever known. What? She's my girlfriend. I know her better than you. And said, she told me when she was 16, she got pregnant. But it was back during the war. So when you got pregnant, you went down south to live with one of your aunts or uncles, and you have the baby. Then you come back up north, and you say, that you gotten married. You got pregnant and you had your baby. But the dad was killed in war. That's my generation. But Betty took Annette and said, this is what we did, and it wasn't good. I'm glad you came forward. It's going to allow all of us to love on you. And you need anything, I want you to call me anytime. You need someone to watch the baby, you call on me. We need that, don't we? We need that. We need to feel like we can go to someone and that that person cares about us. In Ecclesiastes 4, verses 9 and 10 says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their labor. And if one falls down, what does the other one do? Lifts him up. If you're by yourself, you have no one to lift you up. In Proverbs 27, verse 17, I know you've talked about this. As iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens the countenance of a friend. In Proverbs 17:17, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. Your brother is born for adversity.
Beep.
We're there. Good job. We're there to help each other out. We need to admit it. We all need help. And we ought to love each other enough to help each other out. We don't need to go around saying how tough we are. Because we're all sinners. And there's nobody here today that can take on Satan and all of his evil in the world by himself. No one. We have God and we have one another. When I was thinking for this lesson about my mentors, people who I went to said, I need help. My first mentor was Pam. She's the one who taught me the gospel and helped me to start living the life I should have, because I was in the Marine Corps and I wasn't living a Christian life. I remember I was going out drinking and everything else, and Pam told me that she would never marry anyone that was going out drinking. That I'm just not going to date people like that. Wow, most beautiful woman I ever saw. I'll stop drinking. Yeah. She was there to encourage me, you know. After her, I went to college, and Charles Abbey. I worked with him. Dr. Abbey was a great mentor. He'd say, hey, this is what you ought to be doing. I went up to Clearfield, and there was an elder up there, Elwood Stone. Oh, man, that guy was great. I could go up to him at any time. I'd go up to his house, it would be 10 o'clock at night, and you didn't go in the front door or the back door, you go in through the garage door, and it's in the garage, you go up the steps, and they have a wooden door, and you knock on the door up there, and Jean, his wife, was always answering the door. And Jean goes, who is it now? Jean, it's me, your preacher. And she said, oh, John, come on in. And I'd get ready to come in, and Elle would say, oh, don't come in, John, I'll come down there. And we'd sit down in the basement for hours and talk. And when I get discouraged, she was always there for me. I needed that. I went to Washington, PA, and when I went to Washington, PA to preach, one of the elders there, Larry Strait, Larry was always there for me. Hey, you need anything, you let me know. I'm always there. The church there insisted that we buy a house. We'd never owned a house in our lives. And up in Clearfield, they had a preacher's house. We stayed in that. And they told us at Washington, we want you to buy a house. That way, you won't be so apt to leave. You'll be staying. And I said, we can't buy a house. We don't have any money. We don't have anything. In Clearfield, we almost had enough money to eat on all the time. And we little church. Larry was always there. I remember the day that we signed the paperwork for our first house. I went up to the elders. You know, that old self keeps coming out. You have to fight it. I went to the elders, and it was in the elders' preacher meeting. I said, I just want to tell you all something right now. Just because I signed those mortgage payments, and just because I owe all this money, if you ever try to get me to teach or preach any false doctrine, I'll leave. I don't care if I lose money. I'm not going to do that. And Larry says, he let me go on and on. He goes, John, have we ever asked you to preach any false doctrine? No. Do you think that we would ever ask you to preach anything or teach anything false? No. You know what? We're going to mark this up to you being nervous, signing your mortgage, and we won't mention this again, but don't ever be thinking like that. I needed somebody to say, hey, you're nervous. I understand that. We went to Wheeling, and Keith Wright was one of those folks, was always there. We would get Sunday night or Wednesday night. Pam would never ride in with me because Keith and I'd stand out in the parking lot until 11 o'clock at night talking. And then all of a sudden, his wife would call. About 10 minutes later, Pam would call, are you boys coming home? And I'd say, hon, you know it's Keith keeping me here. And Keith said to his wife, you know it's John keeping me here. It's good to have that. There was a young lady who came to church in Washington. Her name was Susie Seaman. Susie was a social worker. I went to see somebody who was causing trouble in the church, hurting people, saying ugly things and hurting people. And I didn't tell her who he was, but I had to go talk to him. And so I called her up and I said, Susie, I have to go talk to somebody who's causing a lot of trouble, hurting people. Do you have any advice? She's a social worker. Here's what she told me. You ought to remember this because I remember it today. John, just remember, hurting people hurt people. So maybe you ought to find out if he's hurting before I start saying things to him. Here his life had been turned upside down. He was hurting so bad. And when I went out, instead of starting in, I said, went out and visited, hi. And he was very defensive because he knew he'd been hurting people. And he said, what you want? And I said, I just want to come out and talk to you. Pam's going like this means I'm over. I'm going to go just a minute more. I said, I want to know how you're doing first. He said, John, my life's just falling apart. We talked about an hour, just about his life falling apart. I'm getting ready to leave, and he says, you came out here to yell at me, didn't you? And I said, I came out to check on you. And you don't want to just say, yeah, I came out to yell at you. I said, came out to check on you. I wanted to talk to you about some stuff. And he goes, I know it's about hurting people. He goes, I'll take care of that tomorrow. I said, okay. He called up and apologized to everybody, went to visit some of the people. You need people in your life. Up in Northwest, I have 3 or 4 men that I go to all the time. Here's the last part of the lesson, and it's yours, because this is very, very important. When you pick out somebody that you're going to go to, that's going to be a mentor, that will help you during the tough times, you make sure you go to somebody who's spiritually strong. Because if you don't, they're not going to give you the best advice. They'll give you what you want to hear, but that's not always what we need to hear. Pick out people who love the Lord, who are wise and strong spiritually, and go to them and say, hey, can we talk? If we do that, if you do that, your generation, you'll be much stronger than my generation. And you'll help the church to grow and grow. It's amazing to me, having this, that you guys put this together. That's amazing. You're some of the best young people I know. I'm so impressed with you. Just keep drawing closer to God. Cry out to Him. Pick out strong people that you can go to. Pick out some your age and pick out some that's older than you, that's lived a while, gone through more. Appreciate you putting up with me so very much. Thank you all.